Hello and welcome to the Open Era Podcast. My name is Devang and Simon. I'm joined as always by Mr. Simon Bushell. Bush back in the UK for over a week now, just over a week. How does it feel? How's it been?
Yes, back in the UKKR or something like that.
I was going to try that. I'm glad you did because I was going to try it.
Yeah, one of us should have tried, and I'm glad at least one of us failed at that as well, that being me. It's nice to be back, yeah. Every so often getting to visit the motherland, going to visit the place that I was born in. I was saying to you midweek, actually, Dev, I really do like London a lot, and it's nice to come back here every so often. So I'm glad to spend some time here.
You sent me a photo that looked lovely by one of those bridges they got over there. I'm not familiar with all these damn bridges they got, but I believe that was London Bridge, correct?
That was London Bridge. Congratulations from your knowledge.
Wow, I'm actually quite proud. But it looked great, and you guys look like you're having a great time. But then when you dropped the bomb that you were loving it, I knew. I could see you moonlighting now in your next role as writing the opposition notes for Keir Starmer as they try to win back the parliament.
Good Lord. Keith Starmer himself.
What a job that would be. Good Lord. Glad to hear you're having a great time, though. Back in London, I will say it is disturbingly not cold in November in Toronto. It's like 19 degrees. Boy, oh boy. Climate change is real. That Simpsons photo of Ralph sitting alone in the bus saying, "I'm in danger." That was what we were all feeling this weekend as it was extremely, extremely warm and beautiful when it shouldn't be. So yeah, that was my weekend, Bush. Shall we get into what was a pretty monumental week? I'd say a week plus in tennis.
It sure was. We had the real arrival of a superstar in the ATP side, but we will touch on that later because we actually need to do something that apparently people in Texas don't do, and that's pay attention to the WTA Finals, or potentially the USTA in general from the looks of things. We're referring to the WTA Finals, which took place during the course of the week in Texas. This is embarrassing, Dev, for everyone involved, just given the lack of fans in attendance. It has to be said, we have to do better about this as a sport, and I think we need to have a good opportunity for reflection of how this went wrong.
It's fair. I think we saw Iga Swiatek after her match with Daria Kasatkina saying, and this was after the 14,000 capacity crowd at Dickies Arena was barely full, saying hopefully we're going to see a full house soon. But yeah, we'll see. I'm really looking forward to it because I like taking energy from the crowd. It was a bit sad, very sad, I would say, as you watch someone who has absolutely dominated on the tennis tour and has been one of the best athletes in the world, full stop, not just one of the best tennis players, and playing in front of a smattering of people, Bush. And I understand the sports calendar being packed and also this tournament itself kind of being moved around and shuffled around as the WTA's try to figure out what exactly their China policy is. But what we're left with is a 14,000 seat venue, Dickies Arena in the USA, Fort Worth, Texas, not being an adequate venue for this tournament. I think that is definitely clear.
Absolutely. I don't think there's any doubt about that at all, just from watching every single match at the stadium. Something has to be done here in terms of setting up a permanent venue. And I think a lot always gets said in different sports about particular towns or particular cities or particular locations being sporting towns and having an appetite for that. It's certainly the case that Fort Worth is not that. And I think it's been on full display during the course of the week, which it has to be said, unfortunately, it's been pretty fun. Like the quality of the field was remarkable. And we've talked about this before, just the back end of the year. If you're a WTA fan, you're eating really well, just given all of those tournaments to back end the year. This was no different. And I thought the quality of the match is very high, even though we're recording on Sunday ahead of the final. I think it's just a shame that we're talking about something else when we could have been talking about the tennis here.
And we should get to the tennis because I think the elephant in the room is that they are going back to China next year. And they're going back to Shenzhen after seemingly reneging, I guess, on the Peng Shuai incident, which is, I believe, a year anniversary today, Bush, when that started. A bit alarming. And I think it is, again, something to be said about the talent and the athletes themselves driving the conversation in the WTA and not maybe wanting to look under the hood and seeing exactly what is happening behind the scenes, as we have similar concerns about the ATP and maybe the structure there and passing a glancing at the PTPA, but also understanding that there is some examination to be done about who is awarded these contracts and how they get to the places they do. But we should get to the tennis itself, and we are recording on the Sunday. In fact, we're recording before both semifinals. So in lieu of dating ourselves horribly and guessing what's going to happen here, Bush, I think it'd be interesting to talk about the 4 players who didn't make it to the semifinals and kind of assess them, because once again, you'd have to have a pretty damn good year even to make it this far, Bush. But when it ends the way it does for some of these players, it's pretty interesting, because now the narrative is turned on its head a bit. Jessica Pegula, one of the stars of the tour this year, losing 3 times in a row. She was stunned, frankly. She's like, I mean, I don't think I've lost this many matches in a short amount of time. This is like the same amount in 3 months or something like that, right? So that's one thing to digest. But then there's someone like Coco Gauff, who I think her performance led basically everyone in tennis, including stars of the past and stars today, to examine what exactly is going on with Coco, because that forehand was pretty shocking, and it led to some pretty massive breakdowns as well.
Sure did. Not a good week for the American pair in general. They went 0-9 combined across for the week in Fort Worth. And you, as you said, stars both present, past, future, anyone who wanted to have an opinion on Corey Gauff.
Me, you.
Exactly. Jesus, I feel like we just
Discord.
need to give her a break in this regard and say, great season. First and foremost, above everything else, you had a great season. And you got to world number 1 in doubles. You got to your first Grand Slam final. Nothing that happened during the course of this week should take away from a truly remarkable arrival year for an 18-year-old. That being said, it was the forehand, I think, that was the talking point for a lot of ex-pros. Specifically, I saw Lindsay Davenport talking about it this morning as well. It's just one of those things, right? Is that when you're not playing well, every single part of your game is observed to such an extreme degree that it's always going to look bad. I talked about this before, and I've used it as an example, that it's like NFL quarterbacks who come out of the college scene and are being analyzed for how they're going to perform at pro level, and they get so over analyzed to the point where you just sort of think, oh, this guy's terrible, like he's got no good qualities about him. That kind of feels where we're at with Coco Gauff, where it's like, it's just trash at this point, right? Like, just give up on it. It kind of feels how the week has gone in regards to some of the narratives towards it.
Yeah, it's a bit much, but I think Lindsay Davenport also was touching on the fact that she thought exhaustion and fatigue were probably the biggest factor overall, and the fact that she is now qualified age-wise to play on the tour and not have to get wildcards or entries into a lot of these tournaments. So she played a ton this year, and I think that obviously will catch up for you, especially when you're still growing and getting into your prime years, which Coco Gauff is certainly not. But I think that is fair, and I totally understand that, and nothing is going to take away from what Gauff has done this year. But I think the analysis of the forehand, of the threads I've seen, the Reddit post, but also like people like Tracy Austin being like, the forehand was just completely the straw that broke the camel's back. And the fact that when you see that disintegrate, the confidence bleeds away. She started really well in that opening match she had, and just to see the forehand go away, it's tough to watch. But I think people like Austin making these remarks, critiquing, maybe giving their 2 cents. I think what will be most interesting to me is how the Gauff family really navigates this going forward, Push, because there's going to be that much more focus on her going forward, and it'll only increase in 2023. And that idea that she has to win the big title soon will only intensify. And I think that'll lead to a lot of people lending their 2 cents. And those include people who are not that far away from her who could maybe lend some advice. And I'm not saying we're going to get into some Emma Raducanu territory where she has 47 coaches in 3 days, but I think it'll be interesting to see who they maybe select advice from or take it in from.
I think that's a very salient point, and I think it's very erudite to look in that direction. One of the things that I will say about Coco Gauff is that if you're looking at this through rose-tinted glasses and you're sort of half full in that regard, the finals, her performance in doubles, the ascent that she's had, the positions that she's got in the ranking, that's all very well and good. But you look at her performances in the big moments and it's not been great at all. And there's been a lot of, I think, justified, maybe not negativity, but justified critique of some of those performances when she has had the tournament on the line, or there's been big points in big matches. specifically her record against Iga Swiatek is abysmal. She's got bageled 3 times this year against the world number 1. That's no shame. A lot of people have got bageled by Iga Swiatek this year, but if you're talking about the class and this is the kind of player that you want to go up against, she has to do better than that. And easy for us to sit here and say it, but you kind of do want to see a little bit more fight and a little more, I guess, tactical game planning in that regard. It's very hard to tactically game plan against someone who hits the ball at 90 miles an hour on a forehand side, but at the same time, it's just one of those things. If she wants to be the best, she's going to have to beat the best. And I think that's going to be one of the biggest things standing in her way next season.
Ons Jabeur also falling along with Daria Kasatkina in the preliminary round, the group stage round. We really want to get bogged down in semantics. Bush, Ons Jabeur, another very, very strong season. Basically not taking much away from this in terms of, well, this is a disappointment. I don't know if we can look at this and be like, well, if she had won this, then the US Open Finals loss is numbed a bit. I think we can look at the season overall and consider it a success, but I'm not taking this kind of badgering she suffered in Fort Worth as an indicator of anything to come next year.
Well, she also kind of ran into a bit of a buzzsaw with Maria Sakkari finding her game again on a surface that I really does think suit Sakkari in a lot of ways. But I don't think Jabeur played that badly during the course of the week.
No.
And she picked up the win against Pegula in an actually very entertaining match, I thought. Like, I know Pegula lost 3 times this week. Actually, she lost more than 3 times, but she lost a lot of times.
Please, Simon, please.
I'm sorry. I'll stop. But again, it's a really good field, Dev. It's just an incredibly talented, deep field. And it's unfortunately a part of being at the WTA Finals that you're going to have losses.
Okay, so we're going to date ourselves now, but there is the Final Four. And I maybe we'll do it this way and say, of the 4 of them, is there one particular storyline or narrative, Bush, that intrigues you more? If you had to say, this person lifting the trophy at the end of the day on Monday night, this person either A, deserves it fully, like Iga Swiatek, and this underlines just the ridiculous season she had, and to be the best, you got to be the best for the most often, the most consistent, and that's what she was, and it's fitting that she's the champion here. Or do you go in a different direction and choose one of the other 3 who are also carrying captivating and compelling storylines of their own?
Yeah, the Iga one is the easy one to sort of pick up, isn't it? But I would go and lean towards Caroline Garcia just to see whether or not she can close out the year in the way that she's ended it so far. She's been on such a good run and the form's been where it is at that she has carried that in. And Sakkari looks great. She's performed really well this week. I'm really excited for that as for a semi-final, sorry. But yeah, I would circle someone like Caroline Garcia because we have used the words generational with her talent. We have used the words unfulfilled as well to talk about that talent as well. I think winning a WTA Finals is a pretty good fulfillment of that promise. And then if she's able to carry that form into next season, look out. She's one of the best players in the world, if not one of the 3 best players in the world. And if she carries it on, look out as well.
Tough honor to bestow on one individual player just because there's so much damn tennis throughout the year. But Bush, I'd reckon that stretch she had in the summer was one of the best times I had watching tennis so far in 2022. Utterly ridiculous. And I think capitalizing on maybe that skill set that doesn't come to everyone at the same age or at the same juncture in their careers. It's fun to watch. So I think that's a great choice. Aryna Sabalenka, let's talk about someone who is basically blacklisted from the tour for a while and not able to play in a bunch of events and going through it in the summer hardcourt season and finding her way. But someone who I think when she's on her game as well is utterly exciting to watch and utterly dominant at times as well. And I think I cannot wait for that semifinal against Iga because this is someone as well who, when she is redlining and at her top level, she can stay with Iga and not let her run away maybe in games in that first set, which I think is something that we've seen Iga do to so many competitors this year and kind of shut down the conversation of, is there a chance to come back or is there a chink in the armor here? And I think Sabalenka is someone to pierce that. But my choice is Sakkari, Bush, not just because I think we've talked about her almost maybe situation and the fact that there is literally everything you want there as a player and someone you want to root for to win a bunch of titles and be the face of Greek tennis beyond Stefanos and maybe the true face of Greek tennis in terms of the most talented, but not being able to put it together in the biggest moments. Apparently was reading on our Discord chat, there's people talking about the fact that she's hired a sports psychologist after the US Open when she crashed out there early, and that seemed to have a good effect. So I'm rooting for her because I think this micro-analysis and this magnifying glass we've put on her struggles, Bush, and like the big moments and her finals, it's real. Like, it's definitely happening. But at a certain point, it feels almost uncomfortable to be like, well, we know what we're going to get. And like, that's that, because she's like that. It feels bad to say. And I'm glad that she's changing it for us.
Totally, yeah. And if you really want another narrative to go on the through line here, it's basically Iga and the Underachievers, if you want to use that as the band name, for example. Which I think is both fair and massively unfair as well. If you look at what the other three women in the semifinals have achieved in their career, there's nothing to be ashamed of. It's incredible. They've the highest of heights they've managed to achieve, but also three players that haven't taken that final step that we want to see. And I think if you're analyzing all three of their games and you're analyzing the start of 2023, I think all three of these other women would circle Grand Slam champion. That's the one thing. That's the goal above everything else. I think the age is kind of interesting as well, isn't it? Sakkari 27, Garcia 29, and Sabalenka 24. Like a little older, obviously Sabalenka being the youngest of the bunch. And then you have this buzzsaw in Iga Swiatek being the baby of the group outside of Coco, of course, and just being utterly dominant. So yeah, I would look at that as the narrative, because it's very possible to use this event as a springboard for next season. And I think if any of those three women manages to win this and overcome whatever version of Iga shows up, and if she's on her top form, they won't. But if she does falter, it's entirely possible that is a very, very good precursor of what happens in 2023.
I want to talk about doubles in a second, Bush, but dare I say, it's better for tennis if Iga wins this tournament.
Yeah. Explain to me your thoughts on that. I'm just kind of curious, because I agree, but I'm curious to know where you're coming from. Much like,
and I think the parity and the amount of top-level talent in WTA is something that we've championed and loved and backed fully this year, and that doesn't change. I remain steadfast in believing in that. I do think to crack that bubble, or crack that sports sphere that exists, perhaps in especially North America, but beyond, I think having a dominant champion in your sport is pretty damn necessary. And I think if Novak and Rafa weren't around, I think it'd be hard for men's tennis as well right now to puncture through that bubble, even with Carlos Alcaraz. So I think having someone like Iga getting into this sphere of the world's best, the very best athlete in the world, full stop, not just a tennis player, is very important.
Agreed. I would be fascinated. We can open this to our Discord and to our listener base in general. Name me an athlete in the world that's had a better year than Iga Swiatek. It's a very,
she should win
list. Whatever
that Lazarus Sports Award is, who I'm not sure what it is or who anoints it to anyone. She should win that. She should definitely win that. The doubles, Bush, once again, still going on, but I just, again, shout out Barb Krejcikova, Sinakova, doing their damn thing consistently. We mentioned Coco Gauff and Jess Pegula having a really amazing year in doubles, but getting absolutely smoked in the round robin. Gabby Dabrowski, Canadian, and her partner almost also falling in group play, but some fascinating names involved here as well, Bush, in terms of players who have had double duty, players who have Elise Mertens, just consistent, and of course the GOAT, Elena Ostapenko, still alive as well as we record. Barb Krejcikova, man, what a player.
Incredible player, fully justified with all the plaudits that she's got throughout the course of the year. They achieved everything they wanted to as a team. And it will be really interesting to see what they actually do and how they realign their goals as a team as well. When you've done literally everything, I don't think there's anything else left to do. So how do you continue to motivate yourself when it comes to that? And how do you find those edges to just keep going? Because it's got to be tough.
This is my journalist insight, Bush. But when I was at the Rogers Cup, aka the National Bank Open, which I realize now, in last week's episode I was falsely calling it by the wrong name. But when I was at the MBO, touring the grounds, and watching a bunch of players practice. And I noticed Barbara Krejcikova playing with her coach, practicing with her coach, but she was involved in both draws there. She'd also, I believe she had already been on court for quite a while at that point in the tournament as well. But she had been going for almost 2.5 hours in incredibly hot conditions. And part of me was just like, this person must really love doing this. That's the only other explanation I have, because like you said, she's basically done it all at this point. And I'm not to say that she's reaching the end of her career by any means at 26, but this is someone who truly loves the grind, like really grinding.
She does. She does indeed. 6-time Grand Slam champion and doubles, world number 1, Olympic doubles champion. She's also a tour finalist winner, and she won last year with Siniakova. She's a mixed doubles champion 3 times over at the Australian Open. There's nothing left to do except, I think, perhaps go for all-time records. If that's really what you're chasing at this point, you got to start looking. Can you get to 10? Can you start getting to 12, to 14, to 20? Like, these are the numbers that you have to start doing. It's got to be so daunting, hasn't it? When you have the success that, like, most people would just die to get one Grand Slam title, either in singles or whatever discipline you're playing in. And then you look at the history annuals of tennis and you're like, oh yeah, the record is like 27. And Jesus, 27. Haven't even played in 27 tournaments, let alone trying to win that many.
It's a tall mountain to climb. Speaking of mountains and nonsensical tweets, go check out Grigor Dimitrov's latest inspirational quote tweet that Josh posted in the Discord. But yeah, check it out. Nonsensical. Anyways, that's Fort Worth. When we come back, we head to Paris. Under the basement lights, a new teenage phenom emerges. We talk about it next, coming up. Welcome back to the Open Era podcast. Well, if you had told me last Sunday, Simon, that we here talking about a teenage phenom wiping the floor with the field and cementing themselves as certainly someone to watch in 2023, would be like, of course, it's Carlos Alcaraz. Shut up, you fool. Even if we didn't say that, maybe we pick Musetti as the romance pick based on your love for him, Simon. But here we sit having to adorn. What's the word? Having to praise Holger Rune? Is that what's happened? Is that where we are? Did that really happen?
It didn't just happen. He had not just the week of his life, but he actually made some of this look remarkably easy, given the players that he played against. So obviously, he kicked his week off with a handshake gate. Not really handshake gate, but some form of...
Stan Wawrinka clearly telling him to stop being such a punk.
Stop being a giant baby, or worse to those effects, is what was said at the handshake. So he sees off the 3-time champion, Grand Slam champion in Wawrinka, sees off Hubie Hurkacz, Andrei Rublev, beats, in quotation mark, Carlos Alcaraz, and then the man of the hour, Felix Auger-Aliassime, who was hotter than anyone in tennis. I think, how many did he 16? 16 matches in a row, which is astonishing achievement. And then I think the crowning achievement of all of it is the final, in the way that he came back and beat the former world number 1 in Novak Djokovic. A remarkable week. We have talked in the past about how Paris produces strange champions. I don't think we can say that about this kid. I think this is the start of a very, very, very long and glittering career.
Can I run off some people who have won this tournament, Simon, in the past?
Please do.
Okay. Karen Khachanov. Okay. Mm-hmm. Jack Sock, Open Era Hall of Famer. Robin Soderling.
The GOAT.
Thomas Berdych. Sebastian Grosjean. I'm dodging a lot of...
Tim Henman.
I'm dodging a lot of people who are up there. Joe Willie Songa won this. I think we have to throw it was just Paris. We have to throw that in the bin. We can't just keep saying Karen Khachanov, which I know a lot of people are clicking to. And it's quite a slap in the face to KK, but here we are. It's true. I mean, the rise is stunning. Vanch, friend of the show, with this tweet earlier, Holger Rune started the season ranked 103rd in the world. He's currently 16th. If he makes the Paris Masters final, he'll be 12th. And the title would put him to 10 and make him the second alternate for Turin. That all happened. He's in the top 10 now. He started last year way out there I think the idea was 2023 is when he could really get into the conversation going forward of making deep runs. But no, I think he's definitely here now. Let's zoom back a bit before I think we get into some of the things about him, maybe that we don't particularly like, Simon, and ask, what is it about him that makes him so formidable? Because I think, especially in the indoors, you saw all of his strengths really highlighted.
He's ridiculously athletic. His strokes, both forehand and backhand, are incredibly repeatable. He is an all-court player in every sense of the word. It's that he can rally with everyone. His defensive ability is remarkable. That ties into his athleticism. He's very, very quick. He moves forward and back, and his lateral movement is terrific. He also possesses a absolute dynamite of a forehand. And it sounds like I am describing the world number one in Carlos Alcaraz.
Perfect player. It sounds like you're describing a perfect player.
They are the same player.
Oh my goodness. And I think that's, aside from the fact that Nike gave him the same shirts this week, which was just that same terrible shirt as well. I was watching him go toe to toe with Novak in the backhand, Bush, not the forehand, but the backhand, which you would assume maybe Novak is going to take that matchup in the waning stages of the third set. But that wasn't the case.
He couldn't hit through him. I think that was the most remarkable thing. How many times have you seen Novak Djokovic go into tank mode and just like, I'm not missing. I'm just going to stand here and rally with someone. Kid didn't mind. He was happy to do it, was completely rock solid in that capacity, forced the aged, unvaccinated Novak Djokovic to go for more. I don't know why I choose that an adjective.
Wow.
Sorry.
All right. Wow. Okay. That was, we'll allow it. It
was uncalled for. I'm sorry.
We'll allow it. I was reading an interview with the coach that did not get a shout out during his trophy speech, Lars Christensen, who he had been with since he was a kid. Lars Christensen, who apparently had been in the circus as well in the past. I'm unverified, but I thought that was a cool tidbit. But anyways, this guy in Denmark, he was running a club, and his Holger Rune's sister was playing, but he was tagging along and basically started up lessons. But he noticed even back then, Bush, that this kid was freakishly fast and had a pretty extreme dedication. I think you see a lot of people gravitate to tennis when they're young, when that dedication aspect, and maybe there's other things pulling them in different ways. And he likes soccer as well. But I think him and his family, which we'll also get to, kind of were like, all right, we're going to focus in on tennis and go all in. And they did go all in basically when he was like 6 or around there, 9 or so. I think you have to imagine things like this when we talk about maybe putting together the perfect player. Like, it's not to say they're created in a lab, but these are people with plans in place from the earliest of ages. And it's, in some sense, if you want to be perhaps romantic about this, and I think that sounds weird to say, but it's kind of cool to see a plan play off, but also it's kind of it's kind of disconcerting as well.
I talked to when we did our episodes on the sort of encapsulation of the year that Carlos Alcaraz had and tried to examine why he was the way he was. I sort of circled the idea that he was a perfect embodiment of a modern tennis player. So to have that full generation cycle of all the latest sports science and the mental trainers that go with it, and also from a technical standpoint as well. So you've had that entire time of heavier tennis balls, slower courts, the grind of it as well. And I think these two are such perfect embodiments of what it took, or what it takes to be a top level tennis player and a top level modern tennis player, complete with the spin on both sides and just how rock solid they are. They just don't miss. I think that's one of the most incredible pieces of praise that I can give to the pair of them, is that they, in a long rally, I think they're going to beat Novak Djokovic in a long rally, which I think says it all about the pair of them.
The last game in which Holger ended up holding, I still cannot believe Novak Djokovic did not break him. I'm utterly baffled that he did not break him. And that's possibly the biggest takeaway for me, maybe, is, and not taking away from the achievement, I was a bit surprised to see Novak's level drop that much, Bush. And this is someone who didn't have to play that much this year, really, through fault of his own. So I wasn't concerned about fitness at all. And yet, He looked kind of old out there. He looked like he was playing someone far fitter than him, especially by the end.
And I think he kind of looked a bit old and a bit washed against Stefanos as well. But that is neither here nor there. We can come on to that in a second. It was an interesting tournament for Djokovic, but I would agree with you, is that when you watched, well, you kind of got this sense as well, the first meeting that Rune had against Djokovic at the US Open in 2021? Question mark.
I think so. Yeah, first round.
First round, and he took the opening set. Yes, he took the opening set. This is going off memory. I think this is right. Anyway, you got a sense of the talent there as well, just simply from the perspective of ability to hang in rallies and just sheer athleticism as well. And we've said this for a while, haven't we, Dev, that we knew this kid is going to be very, very good. Do we think that he's going to be top 10 by the end of the year?
No.
I don't think so. I'm
a bit surprised. I'm a bit surprised that he's going to Turin as an alternate. And the ATP will probably try to stuff him in there somehow for the
I just think mentally that's the biggest surprise of all of this, is that I think all of us who've watched him grow up and all of us who have watched him so far this season would have said in that moment when he's down break points at the start of the second set after losing the first set to the former world number one and 20-time Grand Slam champion, it's like, okay, this match is over. Djokovic breaks and goes on. And he didn't. And I think that is kind of a scary thought of how good he can actually be, because the sky's the limit.
I think it's so important for these guys to be able to get that win sooner than later for a couple of reasons, but also not letting this develop into a rock-sized boulder or a massive boulder in your mind. Where beating these guys seems impossible because they've created all these terrible memories in your head of not being able to accomplish that.
Well, I think they have Carlos Alcaraz to thank for that. I think they have someone who's come along and proved very, very quickly that he is not scared and has managed to tick that off very early in the career. Sorry to bring this up, but Holger Rune has more top 10 wins than Casper Ruud does. That's just...
Oh, no. The good guy lost in this beef?
Yeah, exactly. I forgot about that beef. Weirdest beef of all time.
Well, speaking of, so it pains me to say it, but Brad Gilbert, he did it again. Rune DMC is a great nickname. All hail PG. He's untouchable, but that cool nickname aside, a lot of people don't like him. I don't think I like him that much. Paul, go to Discord saying his mom, who is an average tennis fan, will tune in now and then, just immediately did not like his vibe. She's not alone, Bush. And it's due to, I think, his mannerisms and him yelling basically at Alcaraz taking an MTO before he was about to serve. In their match, it's him getting into that beef with Stan at the net and Stan kind of telling him, hey, don't act like that. But there's also this stuff he does on social and the fact that he seems like a bit of a teenage jerk and someone that you try to avoid basically in other walks of life. I think this conversation, and I've said this before, I'm like, well, people can change and perhaps we'll see and let's not write him off. But I'm curious what your hypothesis of like where this will net out for him, because by the tennis authorities account, he's going to be someone they're going to market the hell out of and be the face probably alongside Carlos Alcaraz of this next wave, because if he can win this early against the big guys, that's massive for them. But I'm curious if you think that the tennis masses will digest this, because he's not Haaland. He's not like a robot that's just like emotionless. And though he has his own weird social media excursions, it's like, he's not someone that we can just be like, oh, he's a brat and he's just a robot that's trained to destroy. This guy is annoying and I think kind of a jerk and someone gifted with this same athletic abilities, but wearing his heart on the sleeve in the wrong ways, being an asshole for bad, kind of, where we need assholes for good.
Yeah. So I would say first and foremost, do not let Holger Rune date your son or daughter would be my, depending on how the kid swings, although we probably do know that given some of his thoughts. That's a joke for everyone out there. Anyway, he's a prick. And there's different strands of prick, I think, in the world. And I think a lot has been made about comparisons between someone like him and Jimmy Connors or John McEnroe. And I don't think that's actually true because this kid is a blue-blooded, silver spoon little shit. That's basically what he is. Like, he is a entitled, spoiled brat, and he is the definition of what that is in the sport of tennis. And I think all of us have been to clubs, all of us have been around that scene, and we've all seen that kid and all hated him. Well, that kid's about to be inside the world top 5 and might be world number 1 within the next couple of years.
Celebrate good times. Come on.
Also,
all right.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I just said is incredibly harsh, and I sort of mean it to be harsh as well, but at the same time, recognizing that he is still 19 years of age. And if we all kind of examine the things that we did at 19, would be horrified, honestly.
Yeah.
He does have time to change. However, Tories don't really change, Dev.
Bang! We got him, ladies and gentlemen. We got him. Some of the other goings on. You mentioned Felix, 16 in a row. Phenomenal run, and I'm not gonna spend any time here picking at that loss to Rune, even though I want to desperately. Bush. I'm just gonna salute the run.
Salute the run, and sets it up really nicely for his 2023 season as well. He can have so much pride with how he played at the back end of the year. I think he proved a lot of people wrong, including, I think, me. I mean,
yeah, me too.
Not that he gives a shit about what
not that
either
it
of us
matters at all.
like, yeah, exactly.
We'll get to it, but I think what Gilles Simon said about him, that hit me. I was like, damn, okay. If Gamer Gilles knows, then the world should too. We touched on Novak. Looked unstoppable at times. He really did. Unstoppable enough that I put down in the notes, because I saw this on Twitter as well. The fact that he wasn't vaccinated and missed those 2 massive tournaments, like, that probably still is the story of the year on the ATP, which is kind of sad, but is that not bigger than Rafa?
Yeah, I think that's a really, really interesting question of who is the world number 1 if Novak Djokovic is not, if Novak Djokovic is vaccinated at the end of the year? Who wins these Grand Slams? Is it still Carlos Alcaraz? I think it probably still is. Is it still Rafael Nadal? I think it probably still is as well. But there's enough of a doubt in my mind that I think it's kind of fascinating to examine that question.
Rafa looking pretty, not ragged, but like looking
mega
to the
washed.
point where I was like, why are you here, man? What are you doing? Why did you come here? Go home.
My man,
go home.
You're a father.
My man,
go home.
Man. You go home.
Why are you here?
He's going to Turin though, and I think he said he wishes he was on tour more this year. I think he was the lack of matches maybe. Was it something? But again, my man, relax. Here's the stat of the week that I thought was shocking. With his quarterfinal win over Tommy Paul, Stefanos Tsitsipas was the first man to record 60 wins this year. How in blue blazes was it, Steph? Consistently good, but never great, I guess.
That was an absolutely shocking fact when I read that. I had no idea.
I had to look it up again, but he also played a boatload of tournaments.
That's an amazing stat. 60 match wins. Really? Wow. I don't really have an explanation for that other than he's managed to hoover up match wins against inferior opposition. I don't think that's even true. I don't want to actually say that on the record because it might not be true. He might have just had a great year and not done anything at Grand Slam level.
He did tie Carlos Alcaraz for most tournament finals with 7. So
7 tournament finals? How?
Yeah, my man was on that frequent flyer program, getting all those miles.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
what a year for him.
And for having a slice as bad as he does to be in the conversation at all in that semifinal with Novak, I'm like, all right, he's still good for a glimpse every now and then. But I couldn't help but think about watching Holger do his thing, Bush, and think to myself, he's passing some of these guys. I don't think he passed Felix, but I think he's leaving some people behind him. Your Rublevs and your Tsitsipas's, I think, in the rearview mirror.
I think so as well. And we will look foolish as he gets dumped out of the Australian Open in the first round.
First round. Anything else from Paris? I think it's aesthetically, camera-wise, camera angles, the best tournament. that we have, possibly. I think it looks the coolest as well. Shouts to Cedric Pioline. We saw this on the Discord as well. Ticket prices for this tournament are far, far more accessible than what other Masters 1000 events or other tournaments of this caliber in Europe and in North America. Something I think that other tournaments should definitely take a page from in terms of exposing, especially youth, to the best tennis players in the world, which I think, Simon, that quote from Cedric outlines so eloquently. And the trophy is just fantastic. I really love this tournament, and I think where it falls also, you're able to take a breather maybe and just focus on the matches themselves without maybe more of a what does this mean kind of checklist, though we're all just talking about what this meant. So I don't know. I like the fact that perhaps in one way the pressure is off and maybe allows for these performances from people that we weren't expecting.
Agreed. I will say one final thing here. Look how they massacred my boy. Lorenzo, chin up. We've all had it happen to us. You'll come back stronger. Don't worry about it. We'll get him next time.
I have to credit Josh on the Discord for being an asshole for good, because I think there are many on the ATP who fit that mold in that conversation. Andy Murray fits that mold. Stan Wawrinka probably fits that mold. We're thinking, Bush, and anyone else that comes to your mind off the top. Daniil Medvedev, possibly. Not quite sure. I don't know.
Andre Rublev, question mark.
Andre Rublev, question. I think Taylor Fritz looks like he'd bully you, but I don't think he would. But he looks like he would, and I think that's key.
I think so, yeah. Those are good shouts, though. I appreciate that.
All right, when we come back to wrap up this week's show, it's Parting Shots on Open Era. Welcome back to Parting Shots. Simon, we said goodbye once again to a member of the French Musketeers, the gamer himself. Never forget Gilles Simon packing at least 34 and 64 in PlayStation games with him on tour during his younger days. The GOAT is hanging them up.
Yes, the GOAT. The French GOAT, indeed. What is GOAT in French? Anyone off the top of their head? I don't know what it is.
I got this. Chèvre. Yeah.
Beautiful French accent. Probably better than mine, to be honest. So
I think it's chèvre. Sorry. Yeah.
Very good. Le chèvre. So Gilles Simon is done. He is done for. His race is run. The reason we bring it up is the French Musketeers all showed up to watch him. And it was actually a really nice situation and sort of culmination of what was expected out of this group across the board, to see Jo-Wilfried Tsonga, to see Gael Monfils, and to see Richard Gasquet in attendance. It's a sign, I think, across the board, and I think we've had this in our own lives, in our own tennis watching, that we're moving on, Dev. And what was considered once the future of the sport is now the past. Because when we were both growing up, so much was expected of Richard Gasquet and Gael Monfils and Jo-Wilfried Tsonga to a lesser extent. These guys are very, very near the end, and if not the end. And in the case of Simon, this was his final tournament. And I don't have good things to say about Gilles Simon, but I will say it is a sign that we are getting close, and French tennis is going to go through a new stage as well.
I have some Gilles Simon related trivia for you, Simon, if you care to partake.
Of course.
Thanks.
This is the depth of my tennis knowledge. I'll do the best of it.
So with 504, Gilles Simon has the third most career wins for a Frenchman in the Open era. Who has more? There's only two players have more.
In the Open era.
And the hints are that both are still active. Questionably active, but they're both active.
I assume Monfils is one of them.
Yes, you got it. Wonderful story of him at a party that involved some questionable aliases and questionable substances. Got a great backhand.
Oh, it is Richard Gasquet.
It is. A shocking stat, 588 to Richard Gasquet, which is a testament to his longevity. Because again, this is a guy entering every draw you can see from coast to coast. He's still playing for the love of the game. Yannick Noah, 482, so just outside. Arguably the most celebrated French players in terms of title winnings. Guy Forget, Henry Leconte, Sebastian Grosjean, Cedric Pioline, Joe-Willie Songo, all trailing these guys. So I think that's, again, expectations and what does it mean to be successful? I think we had Ravi Upa on the show and we had Mert Tunga talking about this generation of Frenchmen, and they began to move the goalposts a bit in terms of like what this was about or what success meant. And I think they rewrote a lot of things for themselves with that Davis Cup run. It was almost like we're doing this for ourselves kind of thing, even though they also enjoyed loads of support from the French Tennis Federation. But have you seen the next wave, Simon? I don't think there is one in French men's tennis. It's pretty galling.
This is a good question. Who is the highest ranked French tennis player on the ATP at the moment? Is it Nicolas Mahut?
Is it? I think it's Rinderketch. I think it is.
Wow.
I think it is.
That can't be right.
I'm almost positive.
I think that is right. Yeah, I think
live
you're right.
recording. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're in a weird spot. Arthur Rinderketch, 44. Manarino. Corentin Moutet just behind them. This is where we were saying American tennis was, I feel like a few years ago. And in comparison, I don't think it's remotely close. American men's tennis looks positively healthy in comparison.
Yeah, I would agree. Maybe not in terms of sheer depth, though. France just seems like it has just a bunch of dudes, though. Just if I was to take, I don't know this for certain, but I would guess that France probably has like 10 players inside of the top 100, something like that, maybe 11. I wonder if is the US the same? It probably is roughly around the same. So it's kind of a fascinating comparison piece.
Hugo Humbert just cracking the top 189th. But yeah, I think they're around there. Benjamin Bonzi's in the top. Yeah, Richard Gasquet, Constantin Lestestien, Quentin Halles. There are guys just, and it's the French infrastructure probably that's aiding them, I think, in being able to get so many guys in the top 100. But I guess the star talent is what I'm looking for, because I'm a North American tennis fan, Simon, and I'm the monster.
Sounds good to me. Do you have any overriding memories of Gilles Simon? Like any overriding matches? Because I'm saying this and I don't really have any. I don't remember any.
I think he played Federer here in 2008 and he beat him.
Wow. Yeah.
And I think that stuck out because I was super pissed. It bothered me a lot because I wanted to see him, and it was near the beginning of that tournament and I was planning to go later. So that stuck out. He was a bit of a heel. He also beat, I think, Nadal that year too. So he had like a crazy run of beating some of the top guys. And he felt to me like one of those guys that if you did see him early on in Australia, especially, you'd be a bit freaked out.
Holy hell, that's right. Looking at
beat
this
Roger
information
there, right? He beat Roger there in Australia, yeah. He beat Roger in some big moments in my life. Not Roger's life, but in my life.
I was looking at this list as well and being like, Feliciano Lopez won Queen's Club? Oh yeah, and Gilles Simon was the player that he beat in the final in 2019. What? Crazy. All right, fair enough.
Don't get stuck in the tennis record books too long because you'll never get out. I do want to touch on the video that was making the rounds of someone in Novak Djokovic's team basically concocting a drink while he was not playing and like kind of shielding it, and people reading what they wanted to read into that. I don't think there was anything nefarious necessarily going on. I think the people around them were probably just trying to be important, like TikTok tennis said. Our friend James said on Twitter, like just people trying to like do what everyone else is doing. That being said, super sketchy. Don't do this in public, people. Again, it's like I got nothing to hide. I'm going to do this out in public, but also just don't do this.
Novak's special stuff. That's what it was. I'll leave that joke up to you to determine whether or not I'm being serious. We're just, how many years are we removed from Space Jam? Joke still holds fine, doesn't it?
It does. It works. I don't think he's alone, though. They all have these potions being made, including Holger Rune. But once again, Simon. I think when anything is filmed this way as well, it just looks obviously illegal and bad. So I think when you combine all of these things, it becomes the smoking gun.
For fear of us getting slapped with a libel or being done for libel, I think I'm going to
carry on.
Yeah, I'm going to leave the Halloween stuff for a second, and we can move swiftly onto the ATP Next Gen Tour Finals, a tournament that we both enjoy a lot, a tournament that I think has produced some really good matches and some entertaining matches, and I think it's also a really good precursor to who the next stars are going to be on the tour. And as we have done on this show before, we've examined previous winners and previous tournament participants, and they have gone on to be successful, and they are the crop that's going to be at the top end of the sport for the years to come. I think one of the biggest names that we talked about is Holger Rune. Whether or not he plays in this tournament is another matter, because he might go back to back, because he might play in the actual tour finals. And Lorenzo Musetti, my favorite, and I think if Rune doesn't play, he's going to win this tournament. You excited for it? I know you like the court.
Love the court.
Do you like the format, and do you like? Are you looking forward to this year's edition? I guess I should say.
Very much so. I don't think Holger Rune is playing. I think he has withdrawn. I just saw it come across the wire. So looks like he's out. I will admit the scoring system I'm less a fan of, Bush, but I think it's me being a curmudgeon and not accepting change in this sense, because I do love the tennis scoring system and I think it's the greatest thing in sport. But the court itself is fantastic, and I'm curious about some of these guys. I think we've seen Lorenzo Musetti obviously a lot. We've seen Jack Draper a lot this year with some big wins, including over Felix Auger-Aliassime this summer, Brandon Nakashima, who's someone who's made huge waves this year. But I don't know much, to be honest, about Dominic Stricker, Francesco Porrasso. I know a bit about Yuri Lehecka. I've seen him and seen people who follow the Challenger Tours rave about this cat. So he's going to be really good very soon. But I noticed a lot of Italian flags here, even without Sinner. Bush, it's noticeable.
I really love Dominic Stricker. I think he's going to be really good. I don't know how amazing he's going to be. Like, if he never cracks the top 20, then I could believe that. I just always buy the talent with him. He's got a huge game, big serve, and he's just like a really fun player to watch. So if you're tuning in to the Next Gen Finals, watch a Stricker match, because I think he's a good, fun player to watch. French Open Junior champion in 2019? Question mark? Maybe 2020? Yeah, I think it's 2020. So keep an eye on him. It's a fun tournament. I saw someone earlier today in doing some rounds in preparation for this reference Jack Draper with the nickname Snack Draper, which, if that sticks, is actually quite funny.
Is it though? I guess it's pretty good. He did. Dominic Stricker did win that 2020 boys title in Paris, Simon. That's a great name, by the way. And the fact that he wears his hat backwards is promising. If he wore his hat forwards and his name was Dominic Stricker, I don't think I'm in. But if he keeps that hat backwards, I'm liking this.
How many times is Brandon Nakashima allowed to be in this tournament?
He's 25. They're letting him in. It's like, this is clearly not allowed. Come on. Some of the other rules, though, just to remind you if you've forgotten: quicker shot clock, 1 sit down per set. I love that. Off-court coaching allowed. Enhanced analytics, which will just give more information to coaches. But the 1 sit down per set and the shot clock, interesting to see. Here's the thing: a lot of these young guys, it's been beaten out of them to take this long or take that long. Like, I think this has to be grandfathered in, because strictly now, some of the older guys on tour perhaps are the guiltiest of these shot clock violations.
Young kids who are
I'm not naming names. I'm not naming names, by the way. I'm not calling anyone out. Cough, Nadal. But yeah.
He went for it. I like the rule changes in general as well. I'm really excited to see it. And I'm very supportive of the fact that they actually try stuff at this tournament. I think it's a good place to do it. You mentioned the Italian flags. Yannick Sinner was the second qualifier for this. Yannick Sinner was a stinker at the end of the year, by the way. Lorenzo Musetti, Francesco Pissarro, Matteo Alnadi, Luca Nardi, Mattia Bellucci. That is incredible depth of talent. These kids are ridiculous. Something is in the water, and I don't mean in association to right-leaning politics in Italy.
Wow,
I do mean in the sense of incredibly talented young players.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but the challenger infrastructure, a lot of those tournaments are out of Italy too, right, Bush? So I think
that's true.
That idea of you're getting a ton of matches against players who are coming from all over to you to play, it has to bode well, and it certainly is. Looking at the names there, time flies, man. We were looking at Dennis and Felix in this, and Carlos Alcaraz and Jannik Sinner basically bypassing this. We'll see some of these guys perhaps at the Tour Finals next year as well. Perhaps it has to be Musetti though. If we were to make the claim, it's probably down to Draper and Musetti, right?
I think so. Yeah, I think they're the talent of the field here. I think we will look at some of the other Italian kids that are coming down the line next year and think that ascent is going to happen. But yeah, I think for the purposes of this year, those are the two names to watch.
Shall we get to the Halloween costume?
We can. I just wanted to do one quick note on Carlos Alcaraz wrapping his season, pulling out through injury, and a question. I was trying my hardest, and it's difficult to find the answer to this. Is he confirmed as the world number one for the end of the year yet?
No, I don't think so. I think
who can be? Is it Rude?
I think Stefanos has a shot as well.
Stefanos won 60 matches this year. Jesus.
Yeah, right.
Anyway,
so I believe, yeah, that is, it's between those, yeah.
So I guess if Steph wins the Tour Finals, and I guess Nadal loses in the round robin or something, Nadal's not going to win this Tour Finals, is he? Surely.
I mean, perhaps this is why he's playing for inexplicable reasons. Or maybe just he really doesn't want Holger Rune to be in because he's the alternate. So I respect that as well.
Let's get to the Halloween costumes. Caught during the course of this week was Anastasia Pavlyuchenkova turning heads with the outfit from The Sixth Sense. Is that right? Fifth Element? Whatever.
Fifth Element is right. Fifth Element is right.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Jesus. What's wrong with me? Anyway.
Close enough.
Close enough. It had a number in it. It led me to ask the question in general, which top players on the tour, either the WTA or the ATP, would dress up for Halloween, and what do you think they would dress as?
Oh, God. Putting me on the spot. I
have one for you.
Please.
Iga Swiatek would dress up as a bagel.
That's good. I think Carlos Alcaraz could be a doll, like an action figure, I think.
I think he's going as like the Mr. Muscle one or Action Man.
I can see that.
He could also go as that character from the Lego movie, right?
Yeah, that's right. I could see Holger Rune being Randall from Recess. It's a deep cut.
Excellent.
I could see... Oh, geez. I'm blanking here now.
This is solid gold podcasting, by the way.
We've had a lot of this in this morning, Sean. It's just dead air. I could see Andrei Rublev as something. I don't know what I could see him as, but I could see him as like a Carrot Top impersonator. I think he can make it funny, though. Carrot Top, I don't know if he's still doing his thing, by the way. That could be good. Hubert Hurkacz looks like someone. I can't put my name on my eye. Like, what is he? Who does he look like? But I think he could pull off like a character costume really well.
Does Hubert Hurkacz have a bit of Postman Pat vibes to him, perhaps?
He does.
Maybe something like that.
He does. What else we got? We got
Jessica Pegula going as a pixelated image from the 1990s to go with the JPEG idea. Oh
my God, that's good. I was gonna say it's an oil Derek. Like that could work as well. Yeah.
Go as an oil baron.
a barrel of oil.
Barrel of oil.
Okay, we'll end it there. Let's stop before. I was impressed I got that many, to be honest, after I was put on the spot this way. Shall we get to 2 challenges remaining then?
Let's do it. Do you want to go first?
I will. Pretty dramatic week in Ontario. If you live here in Canada, support workers in our schools went on strike on Friday. It sounds like there will be many of our Go bus drivers on strike on Monday as well, as they take action against a government that is not listening to their demands or needs, as we face pretty traumatic and tumultuous times for your resident here and dealing with the cost of living soaring, and especially this government choosing not to address this and pit these education staff against parents who are mad that their kids aren't at school. I would just say support workers. And I think this fight affects us all. And today it's them, and tomorrow it'll be another group of people. And then it will be you in terms of who they're coming after to take away benefits and cut from our public schools, which I think has been long their agenda. And now they're building on the Greenbelt after saying they weren't going to build on the Greenbelt. But it was a bad week, Bush. It was a really bad week in Ontario politics and just living here.
I think a really rough week and rough few months in Canadian politics in general, alongside you having an incredibly right-wing government in the provincial level in Ontario. You also have a right-wing government at municipal level as well, as we do in Vancouver. Now we have a very sort of nutcase libertarian dude in charge of Vancouver, which in itself should not be the case. I think it's a much more left-leaning city than that. Interesting you talk about support workers and strikes in general, and organised labour was fortunate enough to stop into central London in Trafalgar Square during the course of the weekend and see the TUC along with the CWU, two unions that are currently holding strike action, one of the train drivers and one of the Royal Mail. One of the speakers on stage was one Jeremy Corbyn as well. So it was cool to get to see him speak live. There's going to be a bunch of people, and solidarity, of course, to the nurses as well in the United Kingdom who ballot tomorrow. At the time of listening, you'll find out where the biggest union in the United Kingdom and the biggest block of workers in the United Kingdom are going on strike, which really, really, when you have your postal workers, your train drivers, and your nurses all potentially going on strike within a week of each other, shit's about to get real, people.
Wow. Big things on both sides of the pond. Bush, great speaking to you, sir, as we continue this pod transatlantic style. Love it.
Wouldn't miss it in the world. We have the ATP Tour Finals coming up, and we have, I guess we should say, just to close out, enjoy the WTA Tour Finals. Enjoy the semifinals and finals. It's the last tennis you're going to get of the year, then we're into the off season.
It's true. A reminder, we are on patreon.com/open era. Join us there, get the show ad free, get access to the Discord where we're talking tennis all the time. A great tennis community in there. Truly love them for talking tennis with us week after week. You also get the show early on Sundays when we record. So head on over to patreon.com/open era. We're also on Twitter @OpenEraPod, tweeting tennis all the time while that platform still exists. Probably won't be for much longer.
Not for much longer. That one's
that goes. Yeah,
that one's done.
That goes. And rate us or review us wherever you get your podcast as we try to get this pod into more people's ears. For producer Greg on the ones and twos, and for Simon, thank you so much for listening to Open Era. We'll talk to you next week.